Has anyone ever read this book? Let's look. I haven't read this book, but I've come across this book from research, and it's very interesting. The First Global Revolution is a book written by Alexander King and Bertrand Schneider, published by Pantheon Books in '91. The book follows up the earlier 1972 work product from the Club of Rome titled The Limits to Growth. The book is intended as a blueprint for the 21st century, putting forward a strategy for world survival at the onset of what they called the world's first global revolution. And we have the contents of the book, the problematique, the problems they face. Okay, so the bullet points: the whirlwind of change, areas of concern, the world economy, intimations of solidarity, the vacuum, human malaise, conclusion, the challenge. So if we go down the page, the goal of the book is to outline a strategy for mobilizing world governments for environmental security, clean energy by purposefully converting the world from a military to a civil economy, tackling global warming and solving the energy problem, dealing with world poverty and disparities between north and south. I don't want to say hemisphere because it's not a planet. So if we go down to this little outtake from the book, this kind of describes everything that we need to know, I think. Because of the sudden absence of traditional enemies, that's because they're all uniting into a confederacy. Because of the sudden absence of traditional enemies, new enemies must be identified. In searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill. All these dangers are caused by human intervention, and it is only through changed attitudes and behavior that they can be overcome. The real enemy then is humanity itself. So the new enemy that they had to identify in its first phase, phase one, was the idea of pollution, global warming, water shortages, famine are the enemies, the dangers. The dangers, these are the dangers, but what's the causation? Humanity. It's humanity. So this is kind of fitting the depopulation agenda. People are bad. You're bad for the planet. So no one believed it, climate change. They came up with this idea, but no one believed it. So they doubled down and went straight into re-education centers, aka schools, where they all learn about this stuff, indoctrinate them. So there is a speech by Reagan, which is on YouTube, in the late 80s, something like 88, where he said, we need to come up with an outside threat that would unite us, perhaps alien life, something that would unite us. And so they create these think tanks and they came up with this. It was an invention of what was going to be, the enemy and the dangers presented by the enemy. So, there was a vacuum because of, there was peace pacts happening. So traditional enemies had started becoming confederacies. And so the guardians of these nations turned on their own populations, is what this is saying. God made the beast to be a guardian of the people, but the beast has turned on the people it's supposed to be protecting. So if we look at this biblically, If we look in Daniel 2, the dream of Nebuchadnezzar, when he interprets the dream of Nebuchadnezzar, he says he saw the feet and the toes were made of partly of fired clay and partly of iron. So the feet and the toes are part iron, part clay. And so this will be a divided kingdom. Yet some of the strength of iron will be in it, just as you saw the iron mixed with clay. And as the toes of the feet were partly iron and partly clay, so this kingdom will be partly strong and partly brittle. As you saw the iron mixed with clay, so the people will mix with one another, but will not hold together any more than iron mixes with clay. So initially, this kingdom here follows the collapse of the Roman Empire, which happened when Romulus, I think it was the fourth, was it Romulus the fourth, was the last emperor of the Roman Empire in the 6th century. And this followed the wearing down of the kingdom by inflation, migration, and plagues. And so the inflation and the migration, the inflation was caused by the debasing their own currency, which was, they were using silver in the coin called the denarius. And they gradually used less and less silver over time, and then they debased the currency and the inflation rocketed. And then we had the Germanic tribes migrating into Rome, and that weakened the kingdom because it kind of lost its identity. These people weren't concerned with the culture of the Romans. And the plague was ravaging the empire as well at this time. So these caused the collapse of the iron that were consisting of the legs of this vision, but the feet being partly iron and partly clay. This next kingdom rose up, which was the Germanic kingdoms, such as the Anglo-Saxons, and the Visigoths, the Vandals. These Germanic tribes were these 10 kingdoms that they reverenced the Church of Rome because they had already converted, even though some of them were Arian Christians, but they'd already converted from paganism, and they reverenced Rome. So that's how it revived. But it says the peoples will mix but will not hold together. And so you had a divided kingdom where they tried to, the church tried to marry the royalty from each of the different kingdoms together in order to unite it, but it didn't work. But we have here in Revelation 17, we have this, there's a particular time when these kingdoms will unite. We pick it up here. It says in verse 16, the 10 horns, so that's those 10 Germanic kingdoms of basically of Europe. The 10 horns and the beast that you saw will hate the prostitute. So these Germanic European nations are in the future, or they have already with the Reformation, they've hated the Church of Rome. The conclusion of this will be that they will leave her desolate and naked and eat her flesh and burn her with fire. So they will destroy the Church of Rome, it says. God has put it in their hearts to carry out his purpose by uniting to give their kingdom to the beast until the words of God are fulfilled. So this is what gives us the context of this particular little study we're doing. God has put it in their hearts, these kingdoms of Europe, to carry out his purpose by uniting. So this is the iron and the clay that don't mix and don't hold together at a time, at a certain point of these last days, they will unite and hand over their kingdoms to the beast. And this is what we've seen in our lifetime, particularly since the Second World War. We have the European Union, the United Nations. It's all to do with uniting and having this one mind, as it also says. But if we link it back into this book that was written, we can see here this is their idea of what this uniting looks like. It says they're going to unite to give their kingdom to the beast. So this is like making the deal with the devil. The devil hates man, the devil turns on man. The real enemy is humanity. And we're seeing that with these agendas that they are indoctrinating the public into, that they're bad, they're causing all these things, and they need to reduce everything and basically deindustrialize and become feudal. This is how Rome rules. It rules by Dark Age feudalism. So let me know your comments and what you think, and if you agree with this interpretation.